Welcome, guys. If this is the first time that you're hearing my voice, or this is the first time you're coming across this channel, I think you're in the right place because this channel is mostly for knowledge seekers, people that are interested in understanding ordinary, people that want to hear, alternative views and the construction of Christian interpretations of ordinary concepts, ordinary spiritual practices, and the rest of it. So, as a researcher, I've come across this condescending attitude that I get from people, especially when I try to explain to them some of these concepts. There is this look, there is this, how would I even explain it? This feeling I get from them, the way they're looking at me. Some of them are looking at me as if, what is this person even talking about? That the world has moved from quote unquote analog, and I'm still trying to drag everybody back to ancient times where things like Alose, things like Nzu, things like Oji, or the normal things that we used to in veneration of our ancestors as they now perceive it as a cake. So when I'm interacting with these people, there's this condescending attitude, and the worst of it is if these kinds of people are actually Christians. This is when you're not going to see the worst attitude. Coming from them, they're looking at you like these people literally told us that in the Bible that there is a man named Jonah that refused to go and do God's work, and God sent a fish to swallow him and send him to Nineveh. But for some reason, that kinds of stories are not stupid. That kind of stories are not weird. That kind of stories are not, they don't make sense logically. But when I tell them things like Inowa, reincarnation, if I tell them about Obanje, if I tell them about how our ancestors believe that, coming into this world is not something we did on our own, that we came into this world with, a varied number of spirits and familiar spirits, predestinations. And these people are looking at me when I'm coming from this aspect as somebody that does not know what she's talking about. So these are those kinds of condescensions that I get when I interact with people that don't actually understand ordinarily. And the worst part of it is that these kinds of people are actually Igbo. I'm talking to an Igbo man, I'm talking to an Igbo woman with all our educational qualifications, and still, this person is still looking at what I'm saying as being with so much disdain and condescension. Then phenomenon of Ogbanje. Now you will now hear them saying, "Oh, please, that our ancestors looked at Ogbanje, the whole sickle cell theory, that these people were actually sickle people with sicklers, that our ancestors, interpreted as Ogbanje." Really? Did they interpret it as Ogbanje? Because I think most of these people think our Igbo ancestors were stupid, our Igbo ancestors were dumb, and for some reason, when our ancestors experienced all these things, they had actually, gone through all the necessary mental images, all the necessary analysis before they said, okay, this phenomenon is actually Ogbanje. So let me even put it this way: if our ancestors were actually wrong about this phenomenon of Ogbanje, that means all the rites, all the rituals, all the sacrifices that they used as a way to curb the effect of Ogbanje would have definitely been null and void. Because when they identify that a family is being plagued by Ogbanje, they don't just go ahead and say, okay, let's do this ritual, let's do that one. No. Now, if a family is being plagued by Ogbanje, which means at every given turn, the woman gives birth and the child will die, repeatedly a number of times, that are how our ancestors used to gauge or cage this effect. First of all, they would allow the last child to die. when they see that this child is already heading to his or her grave, they don't try to basically save that child's life because they need to be sure that, okay, this is actually Obanje. Now, there is this thing they will tell you, Obanje funafuge able to obey Osiwebio Ozueke. Now, what are they going to do here now? Once they've identified, okay, this child is an Obanje, they would give that child a mark. They would probably give it on the face, or they would cut off a finger, or they'll just give it a mark to identify and tell this child, okay, we know that this is what you're doing. You're a trickster. You're trying to confuse us. We know we've identified you. Now, the choice is yours. Either you don't come back to this life or to this family again, or you decide to stay. Now, if it's a dead child, now they've identified. Now, the child will know that, okay, these people have identified me. And if it's coming in the next reincarnation, it's coming with that specific mark. Now, for a child, for a newborn to have that kind of mark, you would have to wonder. You'd have to wonder, how is this possible? Because we cannot come and say that a child's mind is a tabula rasa. But then, we will now say, okay, the phenomenon of Obanje is not possible. Because once a child is coming, there shouldn't be any scars, there shouldn't be any identification. But our ancestors looked at it and they saw that these children coming back again came back with those scars that they inflicted on them before they buried them. Now, these are the indications that that child is going to stay. Now, if the child is not dead, the child is being sick, and the family really, really wants to save the life of that child, and they identify or they mark that child. Now, the child will no longer want to go back because of that identification, because it knows that they've identified that it's an Obanje, and the family will now perform other forms of rituals that would now enable them to basically make sure that, nothing like this happens again. So they've curbed the effect of that Obanje. And these things are practices. These are things that have been done over and over and over and over again. Now, if we are trying to be very scientific now and we say, okay, the definition of a theory or for something to be a scientific process, it means that they've actually studied it, they've actually replicated it, they've done it over and over, and they've gotten to that same result. Then they can now say, okay, this process is now a scientific process. Now, literally, this is what our ancestors practiced back in the day. They understood that for you to basically curb the effects of an Obanje, for you to basically make sure that an Obanje does not plague a family, you will have to perform some of these rites and rituals and mark them. And these things are not things that are done for just one family. It's things that are done for like a lot and thousands of family. And those children were able to stay after they've been identified. So how can you look at this thing and now say, okay, it's an Obanje, it's a C class? That's what I'll answer, because they were not informed via the medical understanding of, people, genotype. People with the SS genotype marrying one another, they don't really understand it there. Then what we saw as an Obanje are actually sickle cell. Now, this is the same condescension that I get when I interact with people. Now, it's not just Obanje. Obanje is just one aspect of this whole thing. Obanje is just one aspect of it. There are other things that I've witnessed from people, other condescensions that I've seen. And this is even coming from people that have not even studied or actually tried to interact with traditional practitioners. Whatever thing they believe, whatever thing they know, their knowledge is actually, restricted based on hearsay. For instance, I was going to Ado, that's Ithiago, a few months back, last year. And the cabman was now basically fixated on him being, strong spiritually. And he now made some assertions. He now said that people that go to deities would definitely resemble a deity. That deities, if you go to them and they don't, you promise a chicken or a goat, if you don't offer it, if you don't feed them every day, they will come and kill you at night. I seriously wanted to keep quiet. I did not want to answer that question. I didn't want to answer, but I could not hold my mouth. So I asked the man, and I asked him, "Sir, have you gone to a shrine before? Have you visited any deity before? Have you had any close interaction with a deity? Like, have you gone to have you made any pledge?" The man looked at me. I'm a woman. So it's not something that they expect. It's something that they want you to just swallow it, hook, line, and sinker. So the man looked at me and started smiling. I was like, "Sir, I'm waiting for your answer." He now said, "Yeah, I've not gone, but..." And I said, "Sir, if you've not gone to a deity to pledge something before, how then would you know that a deity would kill you, that you have to feed a deity every single day, and when you don't feed it, it's going to kill you? How then did you come to this conclusion?" He now said, "The things of the carnal are not revealed to the weak minds." I started laughing. Now, unfortunately for him, me and the guys that I was traveling with are literally heading to an Ado festival. Ado is a deity. So all of us in the car started laughing. And I told the man that everybody, the three of us that you're carrying, we are not Christians, we are traditionalists. We go to deities and we pledge things to deities, and we've not fulfilled every single pledge that we've made, and we are still alive. So where do you now come from? Where is this analysis coming from? So this is just all this condescension that is coming. People believing that, as a Christian, you would say Holy Ghost fire, you would say one kind of prayer, and the deity would literally, be destroyed. All those things are just things that they act on Nollywood, and it's a shame that adults are accepting these narratives. Even before I even became a traditionalist, I took my time. I went I started just for independent research, not because I wanted to spread my knowledge or tell people, share my knowledge about Ordinary with people. I was just on my own. I just walked into a shrine, brought kola nut, gave to the chief priest there, and I told the man, "Sir, please, I would like to have a conversation with you." The man said, "Okay, no problem, I'm coming. You have to wait." The man, I have to wait because this was important. But me waiting, I spent the whole day. I came there around 10 o'clock in the morning, and I left there around 6 p.m. But I did not bother, because they even gave me food there, gave me drink. I felt welcomed. I felt this warmth with them. I sat down there, and when the man came out, I started having a conversation with him. And while the man was performing his rites and rituals, there's a church nearby, praying, doing their normal ceremony. The man was in his own shrine, doing his own thing. Now, when the man came out later, he was and the first question I asked him, "Mpa, what is the difference between Christianity and Ordinary? Why you say that it's as if we are always fighting ourselves?" The man said that people that practice Ordinary don't have problems with Christians. It's just Christians that somehow have problems with us, which is true, because I've actually noticed it. Then I now went further to I said that the only difference between Ordinary and Christianity is just the concept of Jesus Christ. Mind you, this is a priest, a chief priest saying, Jesus Christ. And when he said Jesus Christ, my mind was just turned around. Okay, is this place on fire? Is there any earthquake that is vibrating the shrine? Nothing. Everybody we're just calm. We're just having this conversation. He now said that Christians believe that if you want to get something, your channel is through Jesus Christ. But as an Ordinary practitioner, that we believe that if we want to, access the divine, you have to access the divine through your chi and ezumezu. So when he just made those statements, I just like, wow. So why all this condescension? Why all this tug of war? So these are the things that, I think it's important that as Igbo people, that we begin to ask these questions, that we begin to, see things differently. Because when we now start seeing things differently, then we are raising a nation, a generation that is religiously tolerant. Because what I believe is that if every single human being on this earth is supposed to be Christians, then other forms of religion would not exist. Because we keep talking about the will of God, the mind of God. But what if by Igbos being Christians, we are actually going against the will of God? Now people will say this cannot be possible because traditionally or ordinarily is a demonic religion. But how can it be a demonic religion where the Igbo equivalent word of God is Chukwu? Which if you go to churches, they use this word Chukwu to pray, to venerate Okike, to venerate all of creation. Now you go to these shrines and before they say anything, they first of all call on Chukwu. They say, God, come and bless the day. Now an Igbo man would say, they perform the prayer, the affirmation process of Igofo through by saying Chukwu Okike. Bia gozu body, Chukwu Okike, Bia tonzu, Chukwu Okike, come and do this one. A Christian, or if as a traditionalist, I would now repeat it in English and say, God, come and be with me. Come and use this white chalk as a medium to communicate with me. Come and bless this day. Come and abide with me and be by me. So if ordinary is a demonic tradition, how is it that even in those shrines, the first thing they call on is the all of creation? And they have these laws, these tenets, and so things that this is it's just like the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Of course, killing is a grievous sin against Ajani. In Igbo cosmology, thou shalt not sleep with thy neighbor's wife. Abba, in your Igbo, you know that touching a man's wife is like you're literally trying to kill yourself. Now, the only thing that the only difference here is that ordinary is so rooted to our very fabric that there are laws that are guiding us, and we believe that when you go against this ordinance, I think that the land will come against you. Now we take this warning literally, but if we are being honest, things that are not supposed to be happening are currently happening, because as in Igbo, we've left the mandate ordained by our ancestors, instead by our ancestors, and we're now practicing something that is different. And at the same time, we are now demonizing it, because the problem is not that we're practicing something that is different from ordinary, but the problem is that we're now demonizing and desecrating it, looking at it as the cause of our misfortunes and the cause of our sorrows and the cause of whatever. But if I'm being honest to you, those deities cannot give you money. Because for you to actually communicate with a deity, you need to have something that is working for you. Then you may not want to use that deity to now basically be richer than you should be. You're now actually to influence situations for you that will make you to prosper. So these are the things that people have no clue, and they keep demonizing these deities, they keep demonizing this interface, and somehow we're clapping for them. Now look at what is happening. We're not talking about rape, we're not talking about murder. Some of us cannot even stay in our house comfortably or travel from one place to another, even within this Igbo land, without being scared, without fearing for our life. And we think that we are on the right path, because this is funny. Our ancestors, my dad in those days would say he would just with his small tiny shots, and he will now bring these car tires, and there is this how they do it in back in the day. I played with it like an apple tree. They will now divide it. They will now put it in such a way that you will just put the apple stems and just be guiding it with that car tire, and it will be moving, and you're running with it. Fun days. My dad would say in those days he would move from Nnewi to Ozubulu because his mother sent him on an errand as a child. How many of us can actually do that? Can actually send probably our teenage children to just take a bus and go to Ozobolo without your heart beating, without you thinking that something drastic would happen to that child. And we still think that by abandoning our ancestral practices, we're on the right track. Now, imagine if we just said, okay, we don't want to, venerate these ancestors. We don't want to venerate, we don't want to go to those shrines. But then, we did not go as far as destroying their physical representations, their shrines, the Ofo, the staff of authority that is guiding us as a people. Why, as when we just left all those things the way it was left before, without trying to erase, because that's what we're just trying to erase the efforts of our ancestors completely, then probably there will still be a sense of Christianity. But then our ancestors will still understand that we still regard them, and they will still be doing their instituted functions for us. So I think this podcast thingy is just getting too long. So I'm just going to cut it here. Maybe see you in the next episode. But we need to be mindful of how we regard, how we treat all those things. Every ordinary spiritual practice, every ordinary spiritual process has been tested over and over and over again. And all those things that we do, for like something like Igbo, the process of basically using sympathetic magic in quotes to save a person's life by exchanging the deadly consequences. Maybe the person is sick and is trying to die and is going to die. You exchange that person's life with that of an animal, and the person would regain his or her health and live till God knows when. Except the only limit to this kinds of ritual is if it is fated that this is the time for this person to die, that's it. Because they will tell you that anything that has been destined for you, forget it. There is no mepatalism for that one. There is no exchanging it. There is no trying to, make it to be something that is not. It has been fated. It's going to happen that way. So all those things, the way we acknowledge our chi, the way we interact with Agbo, the way we interact with Allison, Obonuke, works via Obonuke, all those kinds of things that, our ancestors did. These are the things that they did and used it in those days, and it worked for them. It still works now. Now, as people that are mindful of, how they interact with one another, how they interact with their past, their present, and are still looking forward to the future, we need to understand that this is the right time for us to bring in all those things that our ancestors did and practice, how they lived life, and now bring it into this modern time, merge the both of them. And I bet you once we do it, we are going to be an unstoppable nation. Our people will say, Anotabo Achuku Agadi. That has been the Igbo characteristics. Once there is something new, we forget the old. But how about we create a world where we can bring the old, we can bring the new, and merge them together? This is just food for thought. And I hope anybody listening to me today will just try to understand where I'm coming from, and just try to find a way in our individual lives to merge the old and the new, and now, be hopeful of a beautiful future that these two times are going to create for us. But if we still insist on abandoning the old ways of life, well, it's my belief that God that created the universe already created and knows that these kinds of things will happen. God does not have that kind of influence or try to influence our actions directly. He's leaving us on our own, but I believe that it's not stupid. It knows what it's doing. And what it's doing is, or depended thereafter. If you know your own, do your own. Practice your own. If you feel you do not want to practice your own, don't demonize it. And when you're looking at other forms of spiritual practices with so much disdain, with so much condescension, know that yours is not logical. And you cannot logically prove a lot of things that your pastors preach on the pulpits, or you cannot logically prove, things that are in the Bible. But because it's faith to an extent doesn't require logic. It's just you believing and hoping that you're right. It's just as simple as that. So guys, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and let's get this podcast going. Take care. Until next time, let us see you.